Michael, there's something I need to tell you. Wait a minute. It's been a year since my wife passed away. I couldn't refuse when my father-in-law asked me to marry her sister, so I agreed. But as soon as we started living together, I was speechless at the sight of my sister-in-law. I didn't know how much my wife and I owed to this person, and that ignorance was not an excuse. I am Michael. I work at a major corporation. I've been working at this company since I graduated, and 5 years later, I married Heather, a colleague who joined at the same time. It might seem like a normal romance to others, but for me, it was a great love. She was famous for being the most beautiful new employee when she joined. Her features were distinct, and her smile was adorable. Additionally, her casual gestures were very elegant, and her manner of speaking was effortlessly graceful. There were rumors that she must be a lady from a very good family. We were assigned to the same department, so for a while, I worked at the desk next to hers. At first, I was so nervous about working next to such a beauty that we hardly ever spoke outside of work-related matters. I think I was just another colleague to her. Despite our superficial relationship, things changed a bit after the welcome party for new employees. I'm not very good at drinking, so I politely declined the invitation to the after party for my seniors, wanting to go to bed early, and headed to the station. That's when she called out to me from behind, "Michael. Heather, aren't you going to the after party?" I turned it down. Everyone's drunk, and besides, it's karaoke bar, right? I'm not good at singing, and I don't like it, so I'm going home too. Can I walk to the station with you? Yeah, of course. Despite never having had a proper conversation before, suddenly walking together, I wasn't sure what to talk about. At first, I thought so, but unexpectedly, we clicked, or something, and we naturally fell into easy conversation, and before I knew it, we had arrived at the station. It turned out we were on the same line and going in the same direction. In that case, let's ride together. Sounds good. It would have been awkward to part ways there, so we ended up taking the train together naturally. We talked the whole time until she got off at her stop. After that, at work, we would say hi, chat about silly things, and whenever there was a drinking party, it became a standard thing for us to leave early together. She had many suitors, but I never saw her agree to go out with any of them. Seeing her smile made me smile too. The time we spent talking about trivial things gradually became something precious to me. Eventually, our relationship became the subject of rumors, and the seniors started teasing us. "Michael, you and Heather have been looking pretty close lately, huh? And you two are dating." I ended up being teased. But by that time, I had already developed feelings for her, so I was actually happy to hear that others thought so too. I wanted to ask her out. I wanted to tell her how I felt. I wanted to be more than just colleagues, not just companions on the way back from drinking parties, but to have a relationship where we could meet without any reason. But at the same time, I knew I had many rivals. Heather's getting cuter by the day, isn't she? I know. I heard the guys from the sales department are after her too. Seriously. I can count how many times I sighed when I overheard such conversations in the bathroom. But I couldn't keep my feelings to myself any longer. When a year had passed since we joined the company, I finally decided to ask her out. However, on the day I expressed my feelings, she seemed happy for a moment, but then her face clouded over. "I also like you, Michael, but I can't date you." "Why is that?" "There's something I've been keeping a secret from you and everyone else." What she revealed to me was a shocking truth. The truth is, my father is the president of this company. What? I'm sorry for keeping it a secret until now. I didn't want to be seen just as the president's daughter, so I begged my father to let me join the company in secret. I thought no one would see me for who I am if they knew. Certainly, if people had known she was the president's daughter, The seniors wouldn't have casually talked to her or invited her to drinking parties. I want to date you too, Michael, but ever since I was little, I've been told that I would eventually have an arranged marriage. So even if we were to date, there's no future in it. I can't nod in agreement knowing that. I'm truly sorry. She said that and ran away. But I didn't give up there. Knowing everything, I talked to her once again. Even if it's just for a little while, I want to be with you as long as possible. I don't mind if you leave me when it's time for you to get married. I won't hold a grudge, I promise. So please. I wanted her that badly. I loved her that much. Heather nodded, and that's how our relationship began. We were both busy with work, and even on days off, Heather often got invited to parties, so we didn't have many days we could spend together. But on the rare occasions we had time, going on leisurely dates or relaxing at home, those simple moments were incredibly happy, and I often wished they could last forever. But no matter how happy those times were, we knew there was no future for us. So we cherished every day we had together. Then, one day, Heather surprised me by saying, "I want you to meet my father." Heather's eyes were moist. She looked like she might cry at any moment, but it didn't seem like she was sad. "My father found out I have a boyfriend, and he really wants to meet you." But I thought it was pointless to meet him. To that, Heather whispered, "It's different. My father said, if I truly think this is the only person for me, then he would consider our future together. He wants to see what kind of person you are, seriously, not just casually dating." Does that mean? Yes, maybe. We might not have to break up. Maybe we can even get married in the future. I don't want to marry anyone but you. I don't want an arranged marriage. If I get married, I want it to be to you. So please, will you meet my father? It was completely unexpected. Her words raced through my mind. Could I possibly marry Heather? Could we really stay together? Even next year, the year after, and beyond. Just thinking about it made me so happy I was at a loss for words. Seeing me like that, Heather finally started crying, and I hugged her. "I'll meet him. Of course, I will. In fact, please let me meet your father." That's what I asked for. When I actually met him, he was very friendly. He was different from the president I saw at the company, showing a fatherly side. I was nervous throughout and can't clearly remember what I said. But I do remember him saying, "Heather is an irreplaceable daughter to me, but I also care deeply about the company. Therefore, the person Heather marries is very important to the company as well. Do you understand?" "Yes. And if you were to marry Heather, there's a good chance you could be my successor, but that's not something you can take lightly. Are you prepared for that?" I remember looking straight at him and saying, "Of course." If it meant I could be with Heather forever, I was ready to face any challenge. Heather was that irreplaceable to me. He smiled happily at my immediate response. The atmosphere remained warm, and the conversation flowed. At the end, he said, "Take good care of my daughter," and we shook hands firmly, a memory that remains vivid in my mind. Essentially, those words were tantamount to giving us their blessing for our marriage. Hand in hand, we walked home together. Then I proposed to her. We were joyously able to become husband and wife. After such a grand love story, we were living a blissful married life. But tragedy struck suddenly. A few years into our marriage, Heather was hit by a car that ran a red light while crossing the street, and she never returned. When I received a call from the police, I couldn't comprehend what they were saying at all. What? She was no longer here. When I saw her body covered with a white cloth, I finally understood. Heather, why are you lying there? Let's go home, okay? Come on, hold Madison like you always do. Hey, Heather, please, open your eyes, Heather." She looked so peaceful. She appeared as though she was just sleeping. This happened just 3 months after Heather gave birth to our first daughter, Madison. It was an accident that occurred while she went out to buy diapers, saying we were running low, and I was watching Madison. Only Madison's cries, seeking her mother in my arms, echoed in the room, and all I could do was break down in tears. Due to the suddenness of our parting, I was almost in a daze during the wake and the funeral. I kept staring at her photo on the altar, wondering why Heather wasn't beside me, as tears involuntarily spilled out. I couldn't accept it, couldn't make sense of it. Why did this have to happen? If only I had gone to buy them at that time. If I had stopped Heather. Or if I had bought the diapers on my way home from work. My mind was filled with these what-ifs, and I felt like my consciousness was sinking deeper into a dark abyss. Even though the attendees offered their condolences, I could hardly respond. Madison. Hearing Madison cry in my arms, as if she was calling for her mom, made me break down crying again, even though it was impossible. But crying forever wouldn't help. Heather was no longer here. But Madison was in my arms. She's here. I have to protect her. I have to raise her. Madison is a treasure for both me and Heather. Heather is no longer here. So, I decided to dedicate my life to raising her. To cherish her while loving Heather. That's when Heather's parents offered for us to live together. But at that time, I was so engulfed in despair that I couldn't hear anything, only thinking that I had to be strong, that I had to raise Madison, and I couldn't give a proper response. I will raise her. Although I was determined, the reality of a single father working while raising an infant was far more challenging than the word difficult could describe. Housework wasn't an issue since Heather and I had shared the chores, and I had mostly taken care of them. But this was my first time taking care of a child alone. Diaper changes were still not perfect, and Madison would end up crying. Even when we made our park debut, it was mostly moms there, so as a man, I inevitably felt out of place. Where's the mom? I would be asked casually, and knowing that any answer would just make them feel awkward, I couldn't respond well, ending up troubling the other person. Gradually, loneliness built up, and I became more and more distressed. Above all, the hardest part was feeding time. Heather had been exclusively breastfeeding Madison. Fortunately, we didn't need to buy formula milk, as Heather cherished the breastfeeding moments very much. But after Heather was gone, we were forced to switch to formula milk abruptly. As a result, Madison refused the bottle, making it difficult for her to stay hydrated. I just wanted her to drink. I wanted her to drink by any means necessary. But my haste led to nothing going right. Gradually, my anxiety seemed to transfer to Madison, leading to a vicious cycle where no matter what I tried, she wouldn't stop crying. I also faced tough days at work. It was known that Heather was the daughter of the company's president and that I was a potential successor after we got married. There were expectations from those around us. I had my own challenges I wanted to tackle and many things I wanted to learn under the president. But the daycares I could send her to, including the one at the company, wouldn't take her until she was at least 6 months old. Relying on my parents had its limits. Balancing both was nearly impossible. I decided to take parental leave until Madison could be admitted to daycare. However, seeing businessmen in suits heading to work while I was taking Madison to the park or the supermarket made me anxious. I needed to get back to work soon. But thinking of Madison, it seemed I couldn't return yet. Michael, how about we go for a meal together with Madison once things settle down? I received such messages from colleagues, but their pure kindness felt incredibly heavy at the time. When will things settle down? When can I return? If only Heather were here. The loneliness without Heather, the unfamiliarity with childcare, the rush to return to work, and the growing solitude. Filled with an uncertain future, I felt cornered to the brink of breaking down. Eventually, I was so stressed that I developed a rash all over my body, resembling hives. A year had passed in such a lifestyle when I was suddenly summoned by my father-in-law, Mr. Wilson, and headed to my in-law's house. "How may I help you?" As I asked while having tea in the living room, he said, "Actually, I have a proposal for you, Michael, which is why I asked you to come." "A proposal?" "Yes, Yolanda, come in." At his call, a woman who closely resembled Heather entered the living room. It was Heather's sister, Yolanda. "It's been a while, Michael." "Yolanda, it's been a while." "Yolanda, have a seat." "Michael, may I get straight to the point?" "Yes." As Yolanda sat across from me, my father-in-law, with a resolved expression, began to speak. "Actually, I'd like to ask you to take care of Yolanda, that's what I'm thinking." What could that mean? As I asked for clarification, he said, "I want you to marry Yolanda," leaving me speechless. "Michael, please." "No, what?" "Please." "But I'm not thinking about love or marriage anymore, and even though I think Yolanda is wonderful, I still love Heather. I understand how much you cherished and loved my sister. I know it painfully well. That's why I don't need love or romance. You don't have to love me. I just want to be by your side. Please, make me your wife, please." "Yolanda, if marriage is not an option, I don't mind just living together. So please, I beg of you." Her earnestness made me wonder if there was some deeper reason behind her request. But what would Heather think if I agreed to this? Would she be sad in heaven? With that thought, it was hard to say yes. Yet, considering it was a request from Yolanda, whom Heather adored, it was also hard to outright say no. With this new dilemma, I was at my wit's end. At that moment, perhaps sensing the serious atmosphere or the heavy air, Madison began to cry loudly. My mother-in-law tried to soothe her for a while, but with no success. Let me take over," I said as I took Madison to calm her down. But even in my arms, she wouldn't stop crying, and I was at a loss. "May I hold Madison?" Yolanda asked. Yes, of course." Surprised by her request, I hesitantly handed Madison over to Yolanda, and to my amazement, she stopped crying immediately. "Oh." She stopped crying. Both my in-laws and I were astonished, but Yolanda looked at Madison with such a tender, maternal gaze, as if she were her own child. It was like seeing a true mother-daughter pair, and in Yolanda's presence, I felt as if Heather was there. The familiar sense of Heather's presence brought back a wave of nostalgia, pain, and sorrow. Ashamedly, tears blurred my vision. "Yolanda." "Yes." "I've decided. Let's get married." I resolved to marry Yolanda. Before we married, we started living together as a first step. On the first night, "Michael, there's something I need to tell you," she said as she began to undress, catching me off guard. "Wait, hold on, I tried to stop her in a panic, but then I was taken aback. Yolanda revealed a back scarred with painful-looking burn marks. "Yolanda, what happened?" I couldn't help but ask, despite knowing it was a rude question. "Do you remember the explosion at the company's factory that happened around the time you and my sister got engaged?" "Of course, I remember. The accident where you saved Heather, right?" "Yes, officially, it ended with me saving her, but in reality, part of the burning factory collapsed on us. I instinctively protected my sister, but the debris fell on my back. I was fortunate to survive without life-threatening injuries. I don't regret saving my sister. Since that injury, I've been scared to pursue romantic relationships, which led me to give up on the idea of marriage. So, that's what happened. The explosion at the factory. That was an accidental incident caused by a new employee mixing the wrong chemicals. The factory was completely destroyed. The fire spread rapidly, injuring many. At that time, Heather and Yolanda were visiting the factory for inspection and got caught in the accident. I was beside myself with worry, thinking only of Heather's safety. When I learned that Yolanda had saved her, I was overwhelmed with gratitude and wanted to thank her, but Yolanda refused, saying it would be too embarrassing, and I never got the chance to express my gratitude directly. But to think that it wasn't just embarrassment but the injury that kept her from appearing in public. It's too late to realize now. I know that. But still, I'm truly sorry, and thank you for protecting Heather back then. Even if it was just for my own satisfaction, I had to express my gratitude. It's not about apologies or gratitude. That's not what's important. Yes, my injury was painful, but I have no regrets about protecting my sister. I'm confident that if faced with the same situation, I would act the same way without hesitation. Saving her is something I take pride in. Yolanda, my proposal to you was born out of my selfishness. I wanted to care for Madison, whom my sister left behind, out of my own selfish desires. I couldn't stand to watch the man my sister loved grow increasingly weary. Imagining my sister's sadness at seeing your current state made it unbearable for me. I wanted to help you return to work sooner. I wanted to support you so you could dedicate yourself fully to both Madison and your job without strain. I wanted to revive the spirit of the man my sister loved. That's why I persuaded my father to arrange this meeting. Yolanda's words deeply resonated with me. I'm quite a bit younger than my sister, so when our parents were busy, she practically raised me. If I was afraid of the dark, she joined me in bed every night, always singing a lullaby before reading me a storybook, despite her own fatigue. Without a single complaint, she'd stay awake smiling until I fell asleep. She hugged me countless times during tough, sad, or lonely moments and shared in my joys. I loved my sister more than anyone else. She was the most important person to me. Heather often said the same. She considered you more precious than anything else, more like a daughter than a sister. She felt the same loneliness when your parents were busy, and taking care of you was her solace. Being with you made her loneliness vanish. Just looking at your sleeping face gave her the strength to persevere through hardships. For Heather, you were an irreplaceable treasure. Heather, I'm well aware of how deeply you loved Heather, and I know you cherish Madison too, but that doesn't mean you should sacrifice your own life. Marrying me for Heather's sake is absolutely not right. Michael, I too hastily agreed to marry, and I'm truly sorry. Let's not go through with the marriage, okay? I regretted consenting to the marriage, especially since I felt as if I saw Heather and Yolanda. It was a disservice to Yolanda. What was I thinking? Convinced by my argument, Yolanda agreed not to marry me. When we informed my in-laws of our decision not to marry, they seemed surprisingly relieved. Seeing Yolanda in tears, apologizing and saying, "I'm sorry for being selfish and causing trouble for everyone," I too felt relieved. Although we called off the marriage, Madison and I decided to live with my in-laws. Yolanda also lived there and agreed to help care for Madison until she was older, along with my mother-in-law. They persuaded me that raising her in a large family with many caring adults was best. I had almost dismissed this proposal during the funeral, so revisiting it was an eye-opener. Our lives visibly changed after we started living together. Primarily, Yolanda's assistance with Madison enabled me to return to work. I adore Madison. She's my most precious. However, having personal time after returning to work helped me reset mentally. Raising an infant always involves constant vigilance. As a result, parents are always on alert. The moment that tension eased, I felt a significant relief. I could also view my lifestyle objectively. Though I believed I was doing well, I realized in hindsight that I could have leaned on others more. Indeed, Madison became more expressive than when I was struggling alone. Work-wise, a lengthy hiatus could make it difficult to regain one's rhythm. However, my relatively swift return allowed me to resume my duties smoothly. I'm even slated to begin formal training as the successor to the company president soon. I once inquired with my father-in-law about the possibility of medical treatment improving Yolanda's burn scars. However, current medical treatments couldn't fully heal such scars, especially since Yolanda had other burns besides those on her back. She showed me the scars on her back because they were the most prominent and easiest to understand, but it seems difficult to remove them all. Initially, Yolanda was quite reluctant about romance, but as I persistently assured her, "You should be proud of those scars. I want you to be proud of them for Heather's sake too. Thank you sincerely for protecting her." She gradually became more positive. My in-laws are now seeking a suitable match for Yolanda, someone who fully understands and embraces her past. She seems happy, having found someone she gets along with and occasionally going out to eat with. Yolanda has been proactively taking care of household chores and looking after Madison at my in-laws' home. I'm confident she'll make a wonderful wife, so I hope she finds happiness with a good partner. As for me, I was officially announced as the next company president shortly after my return. I've been working harder than ever, breathed by encouragement from those around me, and feeling the weight of my father-in-law's expectations and his stern yet loving guidance. Now is the time to meet those expectations. Madison is thriving in the large family environment and has even started talking recently. Although it's often hard to understand her babbling, the first time she called me daddy, I was moved to tears. Despite many challenges, that one word made everything worthwhile. However, due to my training, work has become busier, and I've had regrettably less time with Madison lately. I'm worried that Madison might forget me if this continues. Yet, seeing her adorable sleeping face every night brings me happiness. Months after we started living together, we all went to visit Heather's grave. Despite the courtesy of my in-laws to allow Heather to be placed in my family grave, I prepared a new one for her, wanting her to rest peacefully in heaven, away from my ancestors. The grave is in a beautiful, refreshing spot surrounded by lush lawns, where the sunlight is soft and the breeze is gentle. The air is fresh, flowers bloom wildly, making it a beautiful place. I plan to be laid to rest here when I go to heaven, to share with Heather the story of my life. It's a small dream I can share with anyone. I almost laugh at myself as I arrange the flowers I brought and clean the tombstone. I came to see you again this year, Heather, I say, joining my hands and closing my eyes to update her on recent events. I talk about work, my in-laws, Yolanda, starting to live together, and Madison. After finishing, I call Madison over. "Come here, Madison." "Heather, this is Madison. She's grown, hasn't she? Your mommy is resting here." "Mommy?" Madison asks. "Yes, your mommy. Say hello." I encourage her. Madison seems unsure but greets after a moment of thought, making us all smile with her cuteness. After Madison and I finish our updates, my in-laws and Yolanda also pay their respects. I look up at the sky, feeling saved by my in-laws and Yolanda. I want to repay their kindness soon, which means I must work hard in both my job and parenting. "Heather, I'll keep doing my best, so it'll be a while before I join you. Sorry, but please keep watching over us," I say. Madison grips my hand tightly. I cherish this happiness, determined to keep living. That's what I think.